to second and rips one to left field. Over Alvarez and gone! Ambush! 2-0 from McCullers. Marsh hits a fly ball to right field. Tucker drifting back to the track, to the wall. He can't get it. It's off the top of the wall and gone! The third home run for the Phillies. Short giving away pitches. Schwarber flies it to center field. McCormick's going back. He's at the track. He's at the wall. Gone! Wow! Monstrous blast! Home mechanics when they're at the plate. Hoskins with a drive. Left field! Wow! An explosion! The South Philly Bombers with 5.
You heard that right. The South Philly Bombers with 5 dingers. The South Philly Bombers with 5 dingers in Game 3 of the World Series, which was rained out yesterday. The crowd was electrifying. I would say 70-80% of the crowd never sat down, at least not on television. The Phils win. The Fightins win 7-0. They are still undefeated in South Philadelphia, and we're going to get into the World Series. A lot of really cool, interesting stuff happening last night. I cannot do Controversial Wednesday today because too much shit happened yesterday. It was one of those days in sports where things were just happening. They're just happening all over the place for a couple of reasons. One, earth-shattering news in the NBA that's kind of interesting. Huge, gargantuan trade deadline. I remember, was it 2020 there was a big trade deadline? 2021 it was largely a bummer. And 2022 another enormous trade deadline. I have an observation for you. Trade deadlines are impacted about how good the draft class is about 4 years earlier. Because that's whose contracts are up. You're welcome. Okay, but I do have one Controversial Wednesday story and one update. The first update is that the Michigan State Spartans, I believe, have indefinitely suspended 5 people from the brawl that happened in the locker room, and the player who was assaulted has retained a lawyer. However, I saw some places where I don't think anything's going to happen because a good lawyer would argue that the Michigan player kind of started it, which would get charges to a misdemeanor level. So that's an update. Do you remember a couple years ago before the Super Bowl when the Chiefs got their asses kicked by the Bucks? Like 2 days before, Andy Reid's kid killed someone because he was driving drunk? Yeah. Britt Reid has been sentenced to 3 years in a federal penitentiary. He did not kill anyone. He seriously injured a 5-year-old girl. That's right. So now he's going to prison. And he apologized for his actions. And yeah, that's coaches' kids coach because their dad never loved them growing up or not enough to abandon their job. And of course, Andy Reid's personal life is a bit of a tragedy. He lost his son to addiction, and now he has not lost another son, but lost him to prison before he comes back. And cannot imagine prison's going to be very fun for a super famous rich white boy in Kansas City, which I don't know where he's going to go. If he's in Missouri, that's bad. He could go to Fort Leavenworth, I guess. Which is like, what, top 5 worst ones in the country, or at least the scariest ones. So, yeah, bad situation for Britt Reid. There's your your dose of controversy for the day. Let's hit some other stuff before we get into the big news. Let's see if I have anything that I really like. There's the Michigan State suspension. Oh, yeah, college football playoff rankings came out yesterday, which is where the committee announces their rankings. All of them are stupid. It's cool to see certain teams rewarded. Like, for example, Tennessee beating Alabama. That was big. They've kicked the shit out of a couple teams. They deserve to be number 1. But that being said, all the Michigan fans are crying that they're number 5. It doesn't matter. Like, and even though it's disrespect, like, no one gives a shit. And for example, Michigan's schedule is so weak and such a joke. They have, and it's not their fault that Penn State sucks, and the Big Ten is actually like, I don't ever want to hear someone say the SEC is overrated. The Big Ten is the overrated conference, like always. Yeah, like really think about it. So their schedule is a joke. Their non-conference schedule is like UConn and Hawaii, and so they're 5th. Like, I mean, that's fair, and this is why. It doesn't fucking matter. Your entire season as a Michigan fan or player comes down to Ohio State. If you beat Ohio State, this won't matter. If you lose to Ohio State, you're not going to the playoff. It is literally that simple. Would Alabama will go? Yes, Alabama will go because we know for sure they're good. We don't know anything about you. You have a running back. That's it. Like kind of a running back. No. TCU, again, they're the team that's kind of in a situation to get screwed. They're undefeated and they're below Alabama. I thought that they played good games. I haven't done a deep dive into their schedule, but they're like good. People are fussy about Clemson. Who's Clemson beat them? Was lost to Wake Forest. Again, no one cares. Tennessee is playing Georgia this weekend. It doesn't matter. And then the winner will probably play Alabama, and if they don't play Alabama, they'll play LSU or Ole Miss. It will sort itself out. The champion of the SEC is going. If the second place team in the SEC who doesn't go to the championship is Alabama or Georgia, they're going. Ohio State or Michigan are probably going. Michigan could lose to some Illinois, I guess. I don't know. I mean, Illinois, by the way, they're 7-1. If they win the Big Ten, they're going. The really interesting thing is the Big 12, the Pac-12, all of that. Ole Miss, LSU, they have a path. Even LSU with 2 losses, they have a path. The real question is, does Utah have a path with 2 losses? Does Southern Cal have a path with 1 loss? Does Oregon have a path with 1 loss? So that's what's really interesting to me. Wake Forest, 2 losses. Let's see, the lowest ranked 1-loss team is Tulane. That's just there to make them feel good. So North Carolina, they have a path, 1 loss. Everyone else has a path. 2-loss teams in the Big 12 and Pac-12 aren't going. A 2-loss team in the SEC, Big 10, or ACC could go, theoretically. And none of this matters. Okay, let's get into, it's going to sort itself out. Like, it does. It always does. There's almost never, like, a real controversy. Like, Georgia cried they didn't get it over Notre Dame. Like, there's never – it is in the players' hands almost always. The playoff largely has stopped people getting fucked. The only team that I believe, from the bottom of my heart, that was genuinely fucked a couple years ago, Penn State got fucked. Other than that, it's been largely correct. And it's going to go to 12 teams soon enough, and a 12-team playoff this year would be Tennessee would play, buys and stuff, Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, Michigan, Alabama, TCU, Oregon, Southern Cal, LSU, Ole Miss, UCLA. So you'd get like Ole Miss playing Michigan in Ann Arbor, LSU would play Alabama, hilariously, TCU would play USC and something like that. UCLA would play Michigan, and Ole Miss would play Alabama. It's gonna, and all these teams a lot of these teams have games scheduled against each other. Oregon and USC are gonna play. Alabama and Ole Miss are gonna play. Georgia and Tennessee are gonna play. It's gonna happen. This is stupid. This is just a TV show. Gives a shit. Okay, last night in the World Series, we have to talk about something kind of serious. Well, first of all, just some fun facts. The Citizens Bank Park registered as a seismic event, according to John Boy Media, my man, twice. And this is according to the Greater Philadelphia Severe Weather Center. That's fun. It's a fun fact. The real thing that happened, so there were 5 home runs against Lance McCullers, who's a very good pitcher. The Astros are really good because they have a bunch of really good pitchers. Justin Verlander, Lance McCullers. I forget who their closer is, but he's a man. So here you can see, I'm going to show the video. Here's Bryce Harper after his home run. So he hits his home run on the first pitch he sees. Okay. The Phillies get a leadoff walk, out. Bryce Harper is the cleanup man, which I think is dumb, but whatever. First pitch he sees is obliterated. It is not a cheap home run. It is obliterated. Okay? But he does that. When he hits home runs, they are crushed. He's just got a sexy home run swing. He just does. So after this, the camera catches this. So I'm going to play it for you. And we're watching. I'm going to mute this so I don't get... Well... Actually, I'll play it. So here he is. He's coming up, and he looks like really serious. Excuse me. I should hit the cough button. Don't care. And you can hear it maybe through the audio. It looks really interesting because he looks like he's looking right at the camera. Does just like to talk shit, but that's not what's happening. Do you hear that? Here, we'll do it again. Listen for the voice behind the announcers.
It might be a ground ball out, but
he's saying Bomer for Alec Bohm.
All over that breaking ball.
Like he's really trying to get his attention.
Trying to get Alec Bohm's
Come over here. He's like looking around. He's like, oh, don't look at me. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. I'm not doing nothing. And there he is, whispering in his ear. Like, look.
McCullers and a little bit of advice coming from Harper to Bohm.
Okay. And then inning ends because Nick Castellanos can't buy a hit. He did get a hit last night, though. Good for him. And then in the second inning, Alec Bohm leads off with a home run. And everyone's like, that was fucking weird. And then they left Lance McCullers in, and he gave up 3 more home runs. All of the home runs he gave up were on off-speed pitches, so fastball, non-fastball. And we found from tipping pitches and then the way that the Astros did their business, the most important thing when you're hitting, and I don't know that much about baseball, but is fastball, non-fastball. Because pros can throw so hard. If you're not looking for a fastball, you are not, nobody who has ever lived essentially is capable of catching up with a fastball when you are expecting a curveball. And if you're expecting a fastball and you don't know what to do, that's when you get those stupid things. It's all about, you kind of have to guess and play the odds. It's sort of like playing goalie in soccer. You don't know, you have to play it right. It appears as if the Phillies found a McCullers situation where he's tipping his pitch. So here's John Boy. And he's like, they all kind of look, all of these look exactly alike, right? These are all the tipped pitches, so none of them are different. And John Boy is the first person that and we all looked at John Boy Media. He's this baseball YouTuber who he finds things like this out. He does great breakdowns and things of really intricate baseball stuff, and also just like funny stuff like fights, and he does some other sports every now and then. Everybody looks to John Boy when shit like this happens because he's elite at baseball understanding, and he's also elite at lip reading. It's amazing. So he does this thread, and everyone's like, okay, those all look the same. But then there's this other guy that he retweeted on his media account, and he's like, look at the differences here. So here's the tipping. Like, watch the leg right here, and if you're not watching, that's fine. And when he's coming up on his leg kick, on one pitch, his foot is really close to his knee. So the leg that he's kicking up with is really close to his knee. And on the other pitch, he's much more centered. You can see the differences here. And then watch where the glove goes. Up. Look how high it is on this one. It's almost like they're on a string, and this one they're lower. Okay? You can see them. Those are the differences. Now, nobody knows what's going on, and the Astros certainly didn't figure out. One of the weirdest things must be if you're got a pitcher tipping his pitches and you don't know. Like, you can't tell as the team that you're being tipped. It was really interesting. It was kind of crazy. It's a World Series record, 5 home runs in a World Series game. They did not score a run except for home runs. They got a bunch of dudes that they're really good hitters, but when they connect, it's gone. Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper, they don't hit cheap home runs. Occasionally they do, but not really. I see that North Korea and Capitol Police are trending. That's fun for me in America. I'm not going to click on those. That's clickbait. Fuck off, Twitter. NFL trade deadline was yesterday, and that was the reason that we can't do Controversial Wednesday today. A lot of stuff happened. The biggest team to make moves was the Miami Dolphins. They sent a first-round pick and a running back to Denver in exchange for Bradley Chubb, who was a top 5 pick of Denver in the 2018 draft, which is super notable because they picked him over Josh Allen, who went to school in Wyoming and would have been a great fit there. But they did it to themselves. What morons. John Elway doesn't make decisions there anymore, incidentally. So not only did the Dolphins get Bradley Chubb, but they also got a running back. Their running back game was disastrous. They can't run the ball. Detroit does not have a good run defense. They don't have a good defense at all. They're actually the worst at every categorical measurable thing. But they stopped the Dolphins' run. They don't have elite offensive linemen. But they got this guy that's going to be able to bring the Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel system to life. They have these elite receivers, and they're clearly going for it. Bradley Chubb is going to be one of the highest paid players at his position coming soon. And so the Dolphins are going for it. Other big news, other big trades. Let me see if I can remember all of them without scrolling. Let's see if we can do it. Can I do it? The Bears are super active on the deadline. So 2 days ago, the Bears traded Roquan Smith, the former first-round pick. Remember, we talked about that. Well, they used the pick that they got in that trade for Chase Claypool, the wide receiver out of Pittsburgh, and now the Bears have 5 Notre Dame players, I think, in their starting lineup, which is an interesting strategy if their goal is to win games. But they got Chase Claypool. He's tall, he's kind of fast, he's mean, and now Justin Fields has a tall, fast, mean guy to throw to, which if you're trying to figure out if your quarterback's good, you got to do that. So that trade to me was really interesting for the Bears. They're getting better and worse. I'm a firm believer that essentially everybody should be buyers and sellers at the deadline. That's just my opinion. Jacksonville Jaguars did a great job of this. They traded last week. They traded their second best running back, a fantasy football darling, to the New York Jets. This week they this is the most interesting one. They acquire Calvin Ridley. Remember, he was going to be a superstar, and then he gambled on sports while he was injured, and now he's suspended. The Jags got him, and they gave up almost nothing for him. I can't believe he went for lower than a second-round pick. It's because he's suspended and nobody knows when he's going to be reinstated. The NFL has to crack down on gambling, etc. You remember? Well, now he's a Jaguar. So the Jaguars got rid of a running back they didn't need, and then they picked up a wide receiver who was on the market, which is a great idea. Very good stuff. Some other interesting ones. The Detroit Lions sent their tight end in division to the Minnesota Vikings. Their tight end, Irv Smith Sr., the Alabama guy, is hurt for 8 weeks. The Vikings are making a run. They're not all in, but this is something that you do if you're trying to make a run. There are a couple interesting things about this trade. Thing number one is that this is an in-division trade, which used to be such a taboo in the NFL, but you're seeing teams do this more. You have to try to win. You cannot be concerned with who your opponent is. I mean, the Eagles traded Donovan McNabb to Washington years ago. Like, this is something that smart teams do. The last 2 trades that the Lions did were with the Vikings to move up to get Jamison Williams, and then now they traded TJ Hockenson. The other interesting thing about this trade that people are arguing about is the analytics behind the value of draft picks, because Detroit did not receive anything in the trade. What they did was move up in the draft. So I'll explain it to you. In the 2023 and 2024 draft, they moved up a round in each one. So Minnesota traded for TJ Hockenson, a 2023 this year 4th-round pick, and a 2024 4th-round pick. Detroit received a 2023 2nd-round pick. So they didn't give them a 3rd, they gave them a 4th, right? A 2023 2nd-round pick and a 2024 3rd-round pick. So they moved up somewhere between 60 spots in 2023 and somewhere between 30 and 60 spots in 2024. The big debate is, like, what are the odds on a player that much higher being better? The other part of this for Detroit is this is fodder. These are tools that you can use to trade up in the draft back into the 1st round if your goal is to get a quarterback. The other thing is that TJ Hockenson, Bradley Chubb, Chase Claypool, all of these guys, TJ Hockenson and Bradley Chubb are late, but Chase Claypool eligible, all of these guys eligible to negotiate for new contracts, which is what I said earlier. The Detroit Lions have a bunch of guys that they have to pay. Weirdly, they have some good players for not being that good. They just don't have any good defensive players. But they have a cornerback who's going to make a lot of money. They have a guard that's going to make a lot of money, and a tight end that's going to make a lot of money, and a running back that's going to make a lot of money. They can't have them all. Better they get nothing. So it's definitely lit the world on fire a little bit. But it's been very fascinating to me. So just to recap everything, here we go. James Robinson goes. We start this off. Christian McCaffrey. Actually, Robbie Anderson from the Panthers to the Cardinals. Then the Niners trade for Christian McCaffrey. Then the Jets trade for James Robinson from the Jaguars. Then the Dallas Cowboys, they received Jonathan Hankins from the Raiders and some pick swapping. The Eagles received Robert Quinn from the Bears. The Kansas City Chiefs traded for Kadarius Toney of the New York Giants. The Baltimore Ravens traded for Roquan Smith from the Chicago Bears. The Minnesota Vikings traded for TJ Hockenson from the Detroit Lions. The Chicago Bears traded for Chase Claypool from the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers traded for William Jackson, a cornerback from Washington. Miami traded for Bradley Chubb from Denver. The Jaguars traded for Calvin Ridley from Atlanta. The Dolphins traded for running back Jeff Wilson from the Niners. The Broncos traded for defensive end Jacob Martin from the Jets. And the Buffalo Bills, they received Naheem Hines, and they trade Zach Moss to the Indianapolis Colts. Did you get all that? Miami Dolphins have bumped up quite a bit in their Super Bowl odds. That's all I'm going to say about that. Plus 500. It's not that big of a bump, but it's significant depending on how into gambling you are. So a lot of stuff going on. I mean, I think it's better to do stuff than to not do stuff for the most part. It really is. It's this weird thing. It's better to do stuff than it is to not do stuff at the trade deadline. Be buyers and sellers. I think that's my opinion. Game 4 of the World Series is tonight. If the Phillies win this game, they can clinch on Thursday night at home. They have yet to lose a game at Citizens Bank Park. Like, rate, review, subscribe. I'll be back and better than ever, Mike.